This is ecoTEC's ecoTEC Roundup show from Aotearoa's first and only climate-positive certified renewable electricity provider. We only source from wind, hydro and solar, and we are the leading supplier of electricity to electric vehicles in Aotearoa. Switch today at ecotecity.co.nz. Welcome back to another roundup of news from the world of clean cars and green energy. Thanks for joining me. I know this week wasn't a good one, and as a US citizen, all I can say is, I'm sorry. I tried. We start today with news that Volvo's EX30 is finally coming to the US. Already on sale in Europe and having started sales in Canada earlier this fall, the EX30 offers Volvo a way to directly compete against cars like the Honda Prologue in the North American marketplace. Priced from $44,900, it won't be eligible for US federal tax credits and may end up getting price hiked due to changes in domestic policy in the US. But for now, if you want the range-topping EX30 twin-motor performance, you'll be able to order one for delivery at the end of this year. If that sounds like too much, though, there is some comfort in the news that Volvo intends on bringing the entry-level rear-wheel drive extended range model to the US next year, with a target price of just under $35,000 before delivery and destination charges. More choice is always good. We have seen Nissan's profitability and future look pretty bleak this year, and this week the Japanese automaker announced what it is calling emergency mode for the brand. With 9,000 jobs expected to be cut across Nissan's global workforce, the automaker has announced that it will be selling off some of its stake in rival Japanese firm Mitsubishi Motors. At the same time, the company's CEO has announced that he will be giving himself a 50% pay cut, meaning that he will be making somewhere around $2.15 million a year instead of the $4.4 million a year he was previously making. Aside from dramatically highlighting the disparity between C-suite and regular workers' salaries, the measures are expected to help save Nissan around $3 billion a year. It's not clear at this time how current and future EV models will be impacted. Heading out of the US election this week, many of us are still wondering what the future of the EV industry in North America will look like in a few months' time. But one thing we can answer for sure right now is that EVs are less partisan than at any point in history. According to research firm Autopilot, while political identity and party affiliation is still a factor in influencing someone's decisions about EV ownership, it's becoming less important when it comes to EV purchase decisions. It asked 12,000 Americans about their opinions on electric vehicles, including EV owners, skeptics, and those open to EV ownership in their sample. While its data shows that people who vote blue are more likely to drive an EV, there's growing acceptance on the other side of the aisle. That's a good thing. Ford has officially started shipping new NACS adapters to EV customers after issues were detected with the original NACS adapters designed and built for the company. Unlike previous adapters, though, the new units are made by EV charging supply specialist Electron, and according to insider reports, are being made in larger volumes than previous adapters could be made. Eligible customers who have yet to receive Ford adapters but filled out the online request form to get one should start to see theirs arriving in the coming weeks, and Ford will also be shipping out replacement NACS adapters to customers who had already received previous units that have now been deemed as defective. Ford cautions customers not to use those original NACS adapters at superchargers and instead to wait for replacement units to arrive. BYD published its October sales data this week, and for the first time in the company's history, it eclipsed 500,000 vehicles sold. Admittedly, not all of those vehicles were battery electric. BYD also makes and sells plug-in hybrids in some markets. But during October, 502,657 new energy vehicles rolled off the production line and into customers' hands, a figure that's 20% up from the previous record, as said a month earlier. Of those vehicles, the lion's share, 310,912, were plug-in hybrids, with battery electric vehicles making up the rest. During October, EV sales were up 15% year over year and 15% on the previous month. If this continues, BYD could become number one in EV sales this year. We are big advocates of bidirectional charging capability on the channel, and as you might know, I personally have a vehicle capable of two-way bidirectional power transfer. Getting vehicle-to-home compatible cars and charging stations working can sometimes be a bit of a pill, however. But if you're in Switzerland and you own a Volkswagen ID EV, you're now going to be able to order your own bidirectional charging station through Sun to Wheel. It's the first officially authorised charging partner to offer V2G-capable charging stations for customers, and as long as you have an ID 3, 4, 5, 7 or Buzz with a battery pack that's a 77 kilowatt-hour model or larger, you'll be able to get your vehicle working with the system after an OTA update. The price isn't exactly cheap, about 13,000 Swiss francs, but for those who want to have grid independence and resilience, it's a smart choice without requiring you to have a massive, oversized EV. Rideshare company Waymo has come a long way since its humble beginnings as the Google self-driving vehicle program. Not only has the capabilities of its fleet improved through successive iterations of its tech, but now with public rideshare services operating in certain markets, Waymo's worth has soared to $45 billion. Waymo now says its fleet of self-driving cars are completing around 100,000 trips a week with paying customers, and that's helped the company secure an additional $5.6 billion in fresh capital. That capital, alongside its 100,000 trips per week and some new upcoming vehicles, has led to the impressive valuation. A lot has been said in recent weeks about the safety of electric vehicles, with one report, as we covered last week, placing some of BYD's electric vehicles at the top of the safety charts. But this week, EuroNCAP, the test agency for EU market vehicles, came out swinging in its latest public testing of the BYD Atto 3. Not one of the models highlighted in last week's high-scored report from Australia. The Atto 3 has, and still does, fare very well in traditional crash tests, scoring 91% for adult occupant, 89% for child occupant, and 69% for vulnerable road users using 2022 model year testing. But new tests released this week, which focused on its assistive technology, classified the car as not recommended, with poor performance in undertake prevention, car cutting out, car cutting in front, local hazard, and road feature recognition. It also scored 0 out of a possible 20 points for hands-on and driver monitoring, suggesting there's some significant software improvements needing to be made before it can operate safely in any kind of autonomous mode. Luxury brand Bentley might not be the first brand you think of as being particularly interested in the electric vehicle industry, but this week its CEO Frank-Stefan Walliser made some pretty big statements on the status of EVs in an interview with Autocar. Talking candidly, the prestige brand's CEO says that he believes we're about to see the end of the first phase of EV development, where EVs are still new and unusual, and moving towards the second phase of EV development, where EVs will be given larger batteries and faster charging to help nervous customers make the switch to electric. The third phase of the EV revolution, which he believes will happen in just over a decade's time, will be the expansion of new battery cell chemistries and a maturation of EV charging networks, allowing for a more diverse and comprehensive portfolio of EVs to come to market. I'm not sure I personally vibe with his particular assessment, but it's certainly good to see the industry note that change is happening and will continue to happen as we head towards a cleaner, zero-emission future. And finally for the segment, we've seen a lot of things happening in the world of electric vertical takeoff and landing in the last few weeks, with some companies like German-based Lilium facing a very bleak future. But for eVTOL specialist Joby, the future is looking a lot better after the completion of its first international exhibition flight in Shizuoka, Japan, where Toyota has a technical centre. Completing the flight with no issues with Mount Fuji in the background, the flight is a first in a long series of test flights planned for Japan thanks to a $500 million long-term agreement signed between Joby and Toyota earlier this year. In addition to representatives from Joby and Toyota Motor Corporation, which included Toyota's CEO Akio Toyoda, representatives from Japan's Civil Aviation Bureau were in attendance, with the ultimate goal of Joby receiving official air certification for operation in Japan in the near future. Before we get to the last two stories, I have a quick question. Are you in the market for a new electric car? If you are, and you're in Aotearoa, you should totally check out our very own buyer's guide at ecotricity.co.nz. It's packed with all the information you need to pick a car that's right for you and includes plenty of details about available vehicles, daily life with an EV, how to file and pay your RUCs, and so much more. Follow the link below and start your journey today. We've talked quite a lot on this channel over the last few years about bans on the sale of new internal combustion engined vehicles as countries around the world toy with the idea of an all-electric future. In the last year, we've seen some significant backtracking as governments change, and those who didn't implement the pledges to choose a greener future make random excuses as to how fossil fuels are essential and we should drill, baby, drill. And not so far from me this week, a ballot measure suggested that CO2 as a, quote, essential part of life, end quote, needed to be produced in large enough volumes to sustain said life. Well, while large parts of the world are now doing the metaphorical equivalent of eating Tide Pods, over in Kigali, Rwanda, a new ban is about to take effect on the registration of internal combustion engined motorcycles for use as taxis. As of the start of January next year, while existing internal combustion engine motorcycle taxi operators will be able to continue to use their existing bikes, new bikes purchased for taxi services must, after that point, be electric. And finally, continuing the good news, because we really do need good news this week, oil giant BP has announced it will be selling off every last one of its filling stations in the Netherlands. And while this sale isn't about going to electric vehicles and increasing charging stations, BP told Reuters that the investment needed for growth in its fossil fuel industry was too high, it does hint at a future where more and more companies begin to realise that fossil fuels aren't the cash cow they once were, either because of environmental laws or because of the increased costs associated with digging up and refining the stuff. I know some outlets have categorised this story slightly differently, but from what I can tell, those filling stations aren't going anywhere just yet. They're getting sold off to someone else. But if BP can't turn a profit on them, I'm hopeful there'll soon be EV charging stations instead. What do you think? And on that note, we're done for the day. Before I go though, do make sure you've hit the notification bell so you don't miss out in the latest in EV news on this channel. And of course, if you haven't switched yet, it's high time to switch to Aotearoa's first and only climate positive certified renewable electricity provider. It's super easy to make the switch, and in doing so, you'll help the nation wean itself off dirty energy and onto clean green power that will keep the land beautiful for generations to come. I'll be back next week as usual, and in the meantime, do check out other videos on this channel, including from the lovely Gavin Kiwi-EV Shoebridge. It's been up to some great things recently, and his videos are well worth a watch. Thanks for joining me. I'm Nikki Gordon-Bloomfield. Have a rest of the week that is awesome. I'll see you next time. Ka kite!